We are back with Hannah Kaminer. The album is Heavy on the Vine, and the song you just heard is called Asheville. Tell me about living in Asheville.
Well, I grew up around the area and I grew up actually in small towns really close by, but my family was constantly in Asheville. And it's a town in the mountains and it's very beautiful. It's in the Blue Ridge Mountains and it's famous for its sunsets and just the crystalline blue color of those mountains. And it's also a huge tourism hotspot and has been very highly promoted as that. And so the region has changed a whole lot. It's been very developed, and it was always somewhat of a tourist destination. But in the last 10 years, it's changed dramatically. And I think a lot of people who grew up here can't afford to live here. And some of the economic problems that we already had have gotten a lot worse. So there's a line in the song where I specifically call out hotels, and that is because we seem to have more hotels than it almost seems like we have more hotels than apartments to live in. It's just ridiculous. Sometimes you'll drive down a quarter mile of road and there'll be like five hotels. And it speaks to the city's prioritization of the tourism economy, and that does have a lot of good elements to it. But it's almost prioritizing people from outside at the expense of people who've lived there a really long time. And so there's it's just a lot of immense change, and I don't think it's all bad, but it's definitely disturbing um the artists that I know and am in community with, like, they can't find a place that's affordable to live um at all. And I know it's happening to a lot of cities. And the people who are the hospitality workers who are working in those hotels and the restaurants and all the things that make Asheville such a destination, they can't afford to live anywhere close to their jobs. They kind of have to commute in. And so it's facing a lot of problems that I don't really have solutions to, but I want to sort of voice that for myself and for other artists who want to stay and who are trying to figure out, how do I make this work? Something is going wrong.
Asheville has one of the great concentrations of top-notch Americana talent in the world. Is that folk scene really being hurt by the development that's coming to Asheville, or are people figuring out a way to commute in or find
Sure.
a distant suburb?
Well, I do think that there are a lot of people who are kind of trying to find a spot on the fringes. So in my song, I'd say, so goodbye to old time Asheville. She's headed for the hills. I mean, people are literally moving to a lot of the areas around Asheville because it's a little bit more affordable. I think that people who are artists are always going to be creative and they're always going to figure it out. And I do think that there's a rich community of artists here, Americana specifically, and you know, it it's the kind of situation where, most of the people I know they've known a landlord for a really long time and they kind of have a good relationship. But if that landlord decides to sell or something like that, the going market rate is just unaffordable for rent. And so um people are making it work, but it's systemically like not really working. I think we just find little pockets of, a landlord who's not going to charge as much or something like that. But with with the community of artists in Asheville, there's a lot of working together. There's a lot of generosity. There's a lot of people kind of having each other's back. I don't know that it's hurting the professional musicians who play in venues as much as it would hurt people who are buskers and people who are kind of there was this just amazing element in Asheville for a long time of people who would come and play on the streets. And it was actually a way that you could earn a pretty good living, and that is does not exist anymore. It's pretty hard to I mean it doesn't completely not exist. It's just kind of been sanitized. Like people don't want travelers around unless they're travelers with a lot of money, and people are it kind of gets lumped in with sort of a homeless element. And so I think that there's just a lot of change, and I think a lot of people who want more of an experience of piecing their lives together in terms of income and busking and maybe waiting tables and all of that. It's just getting a lot harder to do that.
All right. There is a lot of bargaining going on in this album.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
is that a stage of the grieving process you find yourself caught in often?
that is a great question. These are very thoughtful questions. Thank you. Thank you for asking thoughtful questions. Um, I would say yes. I think that when I grew up in the church, I was taught resignation and submission as sort of like a way to be a good person. And as I've um, gained a more of sense of my own agency and gained a sense of my own voice, I think I do find myself in that bargaining a little bit more like, why does it have to be this way? Maybe we can make a deal. I mean, that's not always rational, but I do find myself in that. Uh, I think it's the whole bargaining with reality that you see in like Broke Down Girl too. Like, maybe we can just make this work. It's okay if we're lying to each other, and you're like, no, this is this is a terrible idea. So,
All right. I like to close my interviews off by having the artist pick a song. Only rule is that they cannot have been involved in the creation of the original.
okay.
So for you, I wanted to I wanted you to pick a song where someone is clearly in that bargaining, lying to themselves, doing anything to overcome reality phase of life.
Any song by any artist?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Hmm. I'd have to pick an Iris Dement song. I love Iris Dement. Um, she has a song called Sing the Delta, which I really love. Do you know that song?
Yes, I do.
It's really beautiful. And I kind of think it's her bargaining with her own grief, and trying to bargain with her own sense of loss around home and being homesick. And it's a really beautiful song.
All right, Iris Dement, Sing the Delta. Thanks so much, Hannah
Thank you,
Kaminer.
Trevor.
New album is called Heavy on the Vine.
I really appreciate you having me for this interview and such thoughtful questions.